New York City, November 9th, 1929. Rain is hammering on the windows of 26 Broadway, the headquarters of Standard Oil of New Jersey. Outside, the streets are chaos. Men in expensive suits are jumping from office windows. The stock market has just collapsed. Fortunes are being wiped out in minutes. America is sliding into the Great Depression. But inside the mahogany-paneled boardroom on the 14th floor, the mood is different. Calm, confident, almost smug. Because the men sitting around this table are not worried about the crash. They are oil men, and oil does not crash. Oil is power. Oil is survival. People can stop buying stocks. They cannot stop heating their homes or driving their cars. At the head of the table sits a man named William Stamps Farish. He is 50 years old, tall, heavy build, gray hair slicked back. He wears a dark suit with a gold watch chain across his vest. Farish is from Texas, Humble, Texas to be exact. A small town where his father ran a general store. He worked his way up from nothing, started as a roughneck in the oil fields, got his hands dirty, made his first fortune drilling wells. Then he moved to the business side, corporate deals, mergers, acquisitions. Now he is president of Standard Oil of New Jersey, the largest oil company in the world. Farish does not come from old money like the Rockefellers. He earned his seat at this table. And he is hungry. He wants more than just American oil. He wants global domination. And today, he is about to sign the deal that will make that possible. Across the table from him sit 3 Germans. They flew in from Hamburg 2 days ago. They are dressed in dark suits, perfectly tailored. Their shoes are polished to a mirror shine. They click their heels when they shake hands. They speak English with that clipped, precise German accent. No wasted words, no small talk, business only. The lead negotiator is a man named Carl Bosch. He is a chemist, a genius. He won the Nobel Prize a few years ago for developing a process to make ammonia from nitrogen in the air. It revolutionized agriculture. It also made explosives cheaper. Bosch does not talk about that part. Now Bosch is here to sell something else. A miracle. He spreads blueprints across the table. Technical diagrams covered in chemical formulas. He explains in his dry, methodical voice how his company, IG Farben, has perfected a process called hydrogenation. It takes coal and turns it into liquid fuel. Gasoline, diesel, aviation fuel, all from coal. Farish leans forward. He asks the obvious question. Why does Germany need this? Germany has no oil. Bosch nods. Exactly. Germany lost the First World War because they ran out of fuel. The British blockade strangled them. Without oil, their tanks stopped. Their ships sat in port. Their economy collapsed. Germany will never allow that to happen again. They will make their own fuel, from coal, and Germany has coal, mountains of it. Farish sees the opportunity immediately. If this technology works, it changes everything. Standard Oil controls oil wells, but oil wells run dry. They are limited by geology, but coal? Coal is everywhere. If you can turn coal into gasoline, you can make fuel anywhere in the world. You do not need the Middle East. You do not need Texas. You just need coal in the process. Farish asks to see the plants. Bosch smiles for the first time. He has already arranged it. 2 weeks later, Farish and a team of Standard Oil engineers are on a ship crossing the Atlantic. They arrive in Germany in early December. The country is cold, gray, still recovering from the war and the economic chaos that followed. They visit the Leuna plant near Leipzig. It is massive, smokestacks rising into the gray sky. The noise is deafening. Giant compressors, furnaces, steam hissing from pipes. Inside, German engineers in white coats show them the process. Coal is crushed into powder, mixed with oil, heated under enormous pressure. Hydrogen is forced into the mixture. The molecules break apart and reassemble. Black coal becomes clear liquid fuel. The Americans watch in awe. One of the Standard Oil engineers, a man from Oklahoma named Frank Howard, turns to Farish and says this is the most impressive thing he has ever seen. This is the future. Farish agrees. He wants this technology. He wants it badly. But IG Farben is not stupid. They know what they have. They know how valuable it is. They are not going to just give it away. The negotiations take months, back and forth across the Atlantic. Telegrams, phone calls, meetings in New York, meetings in Berlin. The lawyers get involved. Both sides want control. Both sides want profit. Finally, in the spring of 1930, they reach an agreement. Standard Oil will pay IG Farben $30 million. In exchange, IG Farben will give Standard Oil the patents and technical knowledge for hydrogenation. Standard Oil can build plants in the United States and license the technology to other American companies. IG Farben will keep control of Europe. But there is more. IG Farben has also developed synthetic rubber. They call it Buna rubber. It is made from coal and chemicals instead of tree sap. It is not as good as natural rubber yet, but it is improving. And if a war ever cuts off the natural rubber supply from Asia, synthetic rubber will be worth more than gold. IG Farben agrees to give Standard Oil the Buna rubber patents too. But here is the catch. Standard Oil cannot license those patents to anyone else without IG Farben's permission. If another American company wants to make synthetic rubber, they have to ask IG Farben first, and IG Farben can say no. Why would Standard Oil agree to this? Why would an American company give a German cartel veto power over American industry? Because Farish believes that cooperation is more profitable than competition. He believes that IG Farben will be a valuable partner for decades. He believes that the world will stay peaceful, that Germany will remain stable, that business and politics are separate things. He is wrong, catastrophically wrong. But he does not know that yet. The contract is signed in November 1929. The same month, the stock market crashes. While America slides into economic depression, Standard Oil and IG Farben are building their global empire. Over the next few years, Standard Oil builds hydrogenation plants in the United States. They produce high-octane aviation fuel, the kind that makes airplane engines more powerful. The U.S. Army Air Corps loves it. It gives American pilots an edge. Farish is proud of this. He tells people that Standard Oil is making America stronger. But across the Atlantic, something dark is happening. Germany is collapsing. The depression hits harder there than anywhere else. Unemployment reaches 30%. 6 million Germans are out of work. Families are starving. The democratic government, the Weimar Republic, is paralyzed. Politicians argue while the country burns. In the beer halls of Munich, a man named Adolf Hitler is giving speeches. He is a former corporal from the First World War. He is angry, charismatic. He blames Germany's problems on the Treaty of Versailles, on the Jews, on the communists, on anyone but the German people themselves. He promises to restore German pride, to tear up the treaty, to make Germany great again. In 1933, Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. Within 6 months, he destroys the democratic system. He bans opposition parties. He arrests communists and socialists. He begins persecuting Jews. He pulls Germany out of the League of Nations, and he starts rebuilding the German military. This is illegal. The Treaty of Versailles limits Germany to a small defensive army. No tanks, no air force, no submarines. But Hitler does not care about treaties. He begins building tanks in secret. He creates the Luftwaffe. He drafts young men into the Wehrmacht. Germany is preparing for war, and all of those tanks and planes need fuel. Hitler's government pours money into synthetic fuel production. They build new hydrogenation plants, bigger than Luna, more efficient. By the mid-1930s, Germany is producing millions of gallons of synthetic fuel every year, not enough to run the entire economy, but enough to fuel a war machine. And the technology they are using, it came from Standard Oil. In New York, Farish watches the news from Germany with growing concern. This is not the stable Germany he imagined when he signed the cartel agreement. Hitler is dangerous, unpredictable. He is making threats against his neighbors. He is rearming in violation of international law. Everyone can see that he is preparing for war. But Farish does not cancel the agreement with IG Farben. The company is still paying royalties. The partnership is still profitable. And corporate lawyers assure him that business agreements are separate from politics. They tell him that if war comes, the contract will be suspended, not canceled. After the war, they can go back to business as usual. Farish wants to believe this. He needs to believe this, because if he admits that he made a mistake, if he admits that he gave critical technology to a future enemy, then he is responsible for what comes next. So he does what powerful men always do when they are wrong. He doubles down. In 1936, Hitler sends troops into the Rhineland. It is a demilitarized zone under the Treaty of Versailles. France and Britain do nothing. They are too afraid of another war. In 1938, Hitler annexes Austria. Again, no one stops him. Then he demands the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia. Britain and France agree to give it to him. They call it appeasement. They tell themselves that if they give Hitler what he wants, he will be satisfied. He will stop. They are wrong. In March 1939, Hitler takes the rest of Czechoslovakia. In August, he signs a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. The two dictators agree to carve up Eastern Europe between them. And on September 1st, 1939, German tanks roll into Poland. The Second World War has begun. Britain and France declare war on Germany. But the United States remains neutral. President Franklin Roosevelt wants to help the Allies, but the American people are isolationist. They remember the First World War. They do not want to send their sons to die in Europe again. Standard Oil is now in an impossible position. They are business partners with a company, IG Farben, that is effectively part of the Nazi war machine. IG Farben is producing explosives for the Wehrmacht. They are manufacturing poison gas. Their factories are starting to use forced labor, prisoners, slaves, but the cartel agreement is still in force. Standard Oil continues to honor it. They do not cancel the partnership. They do not stop paying royalties. They tell themselves that this is just business, that they are bound by contract, that there is nothing they can do. This is a lie. They could cancel the agreement. They could walk away, but they do not want to, because they are still making money. And then comes the rubber problem. In the summer of 1940, France falls in 6 weeks. The Nazi blitzkrieg is unstoppable. Holland surrenders, Belgium surrenders, British forces barely escape from Dunkirk. By June, Hitler controls almost all of Western Europe. In Washington, President Roosevelt knows that America will be drawn into this war sooner or later. He asks Congress for money to expand the military. He begins a draft. He calls for America to become the arsenal of democracy. The military starts planning. They need tanks, planes, ships, trucks, and all of those vehicles need rubber, tires, gaskets, seals, hoses. Without rubber, the military cannot function. At this time, 90% of the world's natural rubber comes from plantations in Southeast Asia, British Malaya, French Indochina, the Dutch East Indies. If Japan enters the war and seizes those colonies, America will be cut off. The solution is obvious: develop synthetic rubber production in the United States. America has the chemical industry, the engineers, the factories, everything needed to make Buna rubber, except for one thing: the patents. The patents are controlled by Standard Oil and IG Farben, and under the cartel agreement, Standard Oil cannot license those patents to other American companies without IG Farben's approval. Jesse Jones, the head of the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, is put in charge of mobilizing American industry. He is a blunt, no-nonsense Texas banker. He starts calling chemical companies. He asks them to start producing synthetic rubber, build factories, ramp up production. And company after company tells him the same thing: we cannot. Standard Oil controls the patents, and they will not let us use them. Jones is furious. He calls Standard Oil directly. He demands to speak with Farish. He tells him that this is a matter of national security. The country needs synthetic rubber. Release the patents. Farish stalls. He says the situation is complicated. The patents are co-owned with IG Farben. There are legal issues, contractual obligations. He says they are working on it. Give us time. Time is the one thing America does not have. In the Pacific, Japan is growing more aggressive. They have invaded China. They are moving into Indochina. They are making threats. Everyone can see that Japan is preparing to strike. The question is not if, but when. In September 1941, under intense political pressure, Standard Oil finally agrees to release some of the patents. But even then, they hold back. They release enough to satisfy the immediate crisis. But they keep control of the most valuable technology. They demand royalties. They insist on reviewing every licensing agreement. They are still protecting the cartel, still protecting their partnership with IG Farben. Even as war looms, and then on December 7th, 1941, everything changes. Japanese planes attack Pearl Harbor. More than 2,000 Americans die in a single morning. The USS Arizona explodes and sinks in minutes. The USS Oklahoma capsizes. Sailors burn to death in the oil-slicked water. The next day, President Roosevelt asks Congress for a declaration of war. The vote is nearly unanimous. America is at war with Japan. 3 days later, Germany declares war on the United States. Hitler honors his alliance with Japan. Now America is fighting a two-front war against Germany in Europe, against Japan in the Pacific, and the country is desperately unprepared. The military is small, equipment is outdated, production is insufficient. America needs to mobilize fast. Within weeks, Japan launches offensives across the Pacific. They attack the Philippines, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaya. Everywhere, American and British forces are retreating. And in March 1942, Japan completes its conquest of Southeast Asia. They seize the Dutch East Indies. They take the rubber plantations. Overnight, the United States loses access to 90% of its natural rubber supply. The government panics. Without rubber, the military cannot function. Car production stops. Tire factories shut down. The War Production Board imposes strict rationing. American citizens are asked to donate old tires, rubber boots, rubber mats, anything rubber. Scrap drives are organized in every city and town. And William Farish, sitting in his office at 26 Broadway, is trying to figure out how to save his career. Because in Washington, a man named Thurman Arnold has been paying attention. Arnold is the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Antitrust Division. He is a tough Wyoming lawyer, sharp, relentless. He made his name going after monopolies and corporate cartels, and now he is looking at Standard Oil. Arnold has been collecting evidence for months: memos, contracts, testimony from whistleblowers inside the chemical industry. And what he has found makes him furious. Standard Oil did not just delay synthetic rubber production. They sabotaged it, deliberately, on orders from IG Farben, because IG Farben did not want competition, and Standard Oil chose to protect their German partner instead of their own country. Arnold believes this is more than just a business mistake. He believes it is treason, and he is going to prove it. March 1942, Washington, D.C. The city is transforming into a war machine. Everywhere you look, there are men in uniform: Army, Navy, Marines. The streets are packed with military trucks. New government buildings are going up almost overnight. The War Department is so crowded they are building an entirely new headquarters across the river in Virginia. They will call it the Pentagon. But in a cramped office in the Justice Department building, a man named Thurman Arnold is sitting at his desk staring at a stack of documents. He is 52 years old, tall, thin, sharp-featured. He wears wire-rimmed glasses and a rumpled suit. He looks like a college professor, but he is not. He is a prosecutor, and right now he is building a case that could bring down one of the most powerful corporations in America. Arnold grew up in Wyoming. His father was a lawyer and a state legislator. Arnold went to Princeton, then Harvard Law School. He could have made a fortune in corporate law. But he chose a different path. He became a trust buster. He went after monopolies, big corporations that use their power to crush competition and control markets. He believed that monopolies were a threat to democracy, that when corporations got too big, they stopped serving the people and started serving only themselves. President Roosevelt appointed Arnold to head the Antitrust Division in 1938. Since then, Arnold has gone after dozens of companies: Alcoa, the Tobacco Trust, the movie studios. He does not care how powerful they are. If they break the law, he comes for them. And now he is coming for Standard Oil. Arnold picks up a document from the pile. It is a letter dated October 1939, 1 month after Germany invaded Poland, 1 month after Britain and France declared war. The letter is from a Standard Oil executive to his counterpart at IG Farben in Germany. Arnold reads it aloud to himself. The executive is apologizing for delays in sharing technical specifications for a new refining process. He writes that he hopes the current political difficulties will not interfere with their long-standing friendship and excellent business relationship. He closes with warmest personal regards. Arnold takes off his glasses. He rubs his eyes. Warmest personal regards. To the Nazis, while Poland burned. He puts the letter in a folder marked Evidence. Grand Jury. There's a knock on the door. His assistant enters carrying more files. These just came from Treasury, he says. Financial records. Payments between Standard Oil and IG Farben. Arnold opens the files. The numbers are there in black and white. Royalty payments, licensing fees, back and forth between New York and Berlin, right up until December 1941. Even after Pearl Harbor, the money was still moving. Trying to move. The banks froze the accounts, but Standard Oil had tried to pay. Arnold closes the file. He makes a decision. He is going to indict them. 2 weeks later, Arnold stands before a federal grand jury in New York. The grand jury room is windowless, plain wooden benches. 23 citizens sitting in rows. Some of them are shopkeepers, factory workers, housewives, ordinary people asked to decide whether one of the richest corporations in the world committed a crime. Arnold walks them through the evidence. He shows them the 1929 cartel agreement. He explains how Standard Oil gave IG Farben veto power over synthetic rubber production in the United States. He shows them letters from American chemical companies who tried to get the patents and were blocked. He shows them testimony from Jesse Jones, the man in charge of war production, who says that every factory he contacted told him the same thing. "We cannot make rubber. Standard Oil will not let us." One of the jurors raises her hand. She is a middle-aged woman. She has a son in the Navy. She asked Arnold a question. "Is this treason?" Arnold pauses. He chooses his words carefully. Under the legal definition of treason, he says, the answer is complicated. The cartel agreement was signed in peacetime. Treason requires giving aid to an enemy during wartime. But morally? He looks at the juror. Morally, yes, this is betrayal of the worst kind. The grand jury votes to indict, 18-5. On March 26, 1942, Arnold files criminal charges: conspiracy to restrain trade, conspiracy to monopolize, criminal negligence endangering national security. The defendants are Standard Oil of New Jersey, its subsidiary Standard Oil Development Company, and several executives, including Frank Howard, the chief engineer who negotiated the IG Farben deal. The story hits the newspapers the next morning. Front page of the New York Times. Standard Oil charged with aiding Nazis. The radio networks interrupt regular programming. CBS, NBC. They read the charges on air. America is stunned. Within days, the public reaction explodes. Letters flood into newspaper offices. How could they do this? How could an American company help Hitler? Some people call for the executives to be hanged. Others demand that Standard Oil be broken up and nationalized. Gas stations with the Standard Oil sign are vandalized, windows smashed, pumps spray painted with the word traitor. And in Congress, Senator Harry Truman is preparing for war. Truman is 57 years old. He is from Missouri. Independence, Missouri. He grew up on a farm. His family was not rich. He did not go to college. He worked as a bank clerk, then a farmer. When the First World War started, he joined the army. He became an artillery captain. He saw combat in France. When he came home, he opened a hat shop in Kansas City. It failed. He went into politics. Truman is not smooth. He is not polished. He does not have the Harvard accent or the Wall Street connections. He talks like a farmer. Blunt, direct, no wasted words. And he hates corruption, hates it with a passion. Because he has seen what it does, how it robs ordinary people, how it lets the powerful get away with murder. Now Truman is chairman of the Senate Special Committee to investigate the National Defense Program, the Truman Committee. Its job is to root out waste and fraud in the war effort, to make sure that taxpayer money is not stolen, that contractors are not overcharging, that the military is getting what it pays for. When Truman hears about the Standard Oil case, he calls Thurman Arnold. He tells him to come testify. Arnold agrees. The hearing is set for April 1942. The day of the hearing, the Senate caucus room is packed, every seat filled, reporters lining the walls, photographers jostling for position. The room smells like cigarette smoke and sweat. The air is thick with tension. Truman sits at the center of the long table on the raised platform. He has a gavel in his hand. He bangs it once. The room goes quiet. He calls Thurman Arnold to testify. Arnold walks to the witness table. He is sworn in. Truman asks him to explain the case. Arnold does. He lays it out step by step. The cartel agreement, the veto power, the blocked patents, the delayed production of synthetic rubber, the continued payments to IG Farben even after Pearl Harbor. When Arnold finishes, Truman leans back in his chair. He looks at the audience. Then he looks at the Standard Oil lawyers sitting in the front row. 3 men in expensive suits. They look calm, confident. They have the best legal team money can buy. Truman leans forward. He speaks slowly, deliberately. His voice is not loud, but it carries. He says, "I have listened to Mr. Arnold. I have read the evidence, and I have to tell you, I am shocked. I am shocked that an American corporation would do this. I am shocked that men who live in this country, who benefit from its freedoms, who make their fortunes from its economy, would sell out their own people for a profit." One of the Standard Oil lawyers starts to stand. Truman points at him. "Sit down. I am not finished." The lawyer sits. Truman continues. "You want me to believe this was just business? You want me to believe that signing a deal with the Nazis was legal and proper? Let me tell you something. My nephew is in the Pacific right now. He is 20 years old. He is a Marine. He is fighting the Japanese with equipment that does not work half the time because we do not have enough rubber. We do not have enough rubber because your client blocked production. Your client chose to protect their partnership with IG Farben instead of protecting American lives." Truman pauses. He picks up a piece of paper. He reads from it. This is a quote from Patrick Henry. "If this be treason, make the most of it. Well, I say this. If what Standard Oil did is not treason, then I do not know what treason is. If selling out your country for money is not treason, then the word has no meaning." The room erupts. Reporters are scribbling furiously. Photographers are snapping pictures. The Standard Oil lawyers are whispering to each other frantically. One of them tries to interrupt. "Senator, if I may." Truman bangs the gavel. "No, you may not. You will sit there and you will listen. Because the American people deserve to know what you did. They deserve to know that while their sons were dying, you were counting your profits." The hearing continues for hours, witness after witness. Jesse Jones testifies about the rubber crisis. Chemical engineers testify about being denied access to patents. A Navy procurement officer testifies that critical equipment could not be manufactured because of the Standard Oil monopoly. By the end of the day, the case is clear. Standard Oil put profits over patriotism. They chose Germany over America. They betrayed their country. The next morning, newspapers across the nation run the story. The headlines are brutal. Truman calls Standard Oil traitors. Oil giant accused of Nazi collaboration. Did Rockefeller help Hitler? Time magazine publishes an article. They write that Standard Oil has been smeared from hell to breakfast, and that the company deserves every word of it. Public opinion turns hard. Boycotts spread. Union leaders call for strikes. Politicians demand action. Standard Oil is in full crisis. At 26 Broadway in New York, William Farish is watching his world collapse. He sits in his office on the 14th floor. It is late evening. The building is empty. The cleaning crews have gone home. The city outside is dark. Blackout curtains cover the windows because of the war. No lights allowed. The enemy might see. Farish has a bottle of bourbon on his desk. He does not usually drink during the week, but tonight he pours himself a glass. Then another. On his desk is a stack of newspapers. He has been reading them all day. Every article, every editorial, every letter to the editor calling him a traitor, calling for his arrest, calling for him to be shot. He built this company, not Rockefeller. Rockefeller founded it, sure, but Farish built it into what it is today. He made the deals. He expanded into Europe. He turned Standard Oil into a global empire. And he did it legally. Everything he did was legal. The lawyers checked every contract, every clause. It was all legal. But legal and right are not the same thing. He knows that now. He thinks about the cartel agreement, 1929, 13 years ago. It seemed so smart at the time. IG Farben had technology we needed. We had technology they needed. Why not share? Why not cooperate? Business is business. Politics are politics. You keep them separate, except you cannot. Not when the politics turn into war, not when your business partner becomes your enemy. He should have canceled the agreement. He knows that. In 1933, when Hitler came to power, or in 1938, when Germany annexed Austria, or in 1939, when they invaded Poland. He had chances, multiple chances, but he did not take them. Because the cartel was profitable. Because IG Farben was still paying royalties. Because he believed that after the war, whoever won, business would continue. The world would go back to normal. He was wrong. Farish picks up another newspaper. The headline says Truman demands jail time for oil executives. He reads the article. Truman is calling for criminal prosecutions, real jail time, not fines, not settlements, prison. Farish feels his chest tighten. It has been happening more often lately. The stress, the pressure. His doctor told him to slow down, to rest. But how can he rest? His company is under attack. His reputation is destroyed. His name will forever be associated with the Nazis. He pours another drink. There is a soft knock on the door. His secretary. She should have gone home hours ago. She opens the door slightly. "Mr. Farish, are you all right?" He waves her off. "Go home, Dorothy. Get some rest." She hesitates. She has worked for him for 15 years. She knows when something is wrong. "Are you sure?" He nods. "I am fine. Just finishing some work." She leaves. He hears her footsteps in the hallway. Then silence. Farish sits alone in the dark. He thinks about his father, a shopkeeper in a small Texas town. Honest, hardworking, proud. What would his father think of him now? Would he understand? Would he say that business is business? Or would he be ashamed? Farish does not know, and he will never know. Because his father is dead, and Farish is alone. He drains the glass. He does not pour another. He stands up. His chest hurts. He should call a doctor, but he does not. He picks up his coat. He turns off the desk lamp. He walks out of the office. The next morning, Dorothy finds him. He collapsed in the hallway. Heart attack. The ambulance came, but it was too late. He was already gone. William Stamps Farish dies on November 29, 1942. He is 63 years old. The newspapers report it briefly. Oil executive dies. A few lines. No mention of the scandal. It is old news now. America has moved on. There is a war to fight. But some people do not forget. Thurman Arnold reads about Farish's death in the paper. He feels nothing. No satisfaction. No pity. Just a sense of incompleteness. Farish died without ever admitting what he did. Without ever apologizing. Without ever facing a jury. Arnold closes the paper. He goes back to work. Because the case is not over. Standard Oil is still operating. The cartel may be broken, but the company survived. And Arnold knows that unless something changes, this will happen again. Different company, different war, same greed. And he is right. Because the lesson America learned from Standard Oil was not that corporations should be held accountable. The lesson was that corporations are too big to punish, too important to fail, too powerful to touch. And in the decades to come, that lesson will be proven over and over again. But in 1942, in the halls of the Senate, in the offices of the Justice Department, there are still men who believe that justice matters, that right and wrong matter, that patriotism is not just a word you put on an advertisement. And those men are about to discover something that will make the Standard Oil scandal look small. Because in Germany, Allied soldiers are advancing. They are liberating concentration camps, they are capturing factories, and in the ruins of IG Farben facilities, they are finding documents, thousands of documents, evidence of collaboration that goes deeper and darker than anyone imagined. The full truth is about to come out, and it will be worse than anyone expected. Germany, May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe Day. The war is over. Adolf Hitler is dead. Berlin is in ruins. Across Germany, Allied armies are securing territory and rounding up Nazi officials. The shooting has stopped, but the work is just beginning. In Frankfurt, American soldiers enter the headquarters of IG Farben. The building is enormous, 6 wings spreading out from a central tower. Before the war, it was the nerve center of German chemical production. 20,000 employees worked here. Scientists, engineers, accountants, managers. Now it is nearly empty. Most of the executives fled when the Americans approached. They went west, away from the advancing Soviets. But they left in a hurry. And hurried men make mistakes. In the basement, a young Army lieutenant named James Stewart, not the actor, just a guy from Ohio with the same name, is leading a team through the archives. Rows and rows of filing cabinets, gray metal, each one labeled in German. Stewart does not speak German, but he brought a translator, a German Jew who escaped to America in 1938. His name is David Klein. He lost his entire family in the camps. Klein walks along the cabinets, reading the labels aloud. production records, personnel files, financial accounts, patent agreements. He stops at one cabinet. He pulls it open. Inside are folders, hundreds of them. He pulls one out, opens it, starts reading. His face goes pale. Stewart asks what it says. Klein does not answer at first. He keeps reading. Then he looks up. "Lieutenant, you need to see this." They spend the next 6 hours going through the files. What they find is worse than they imagined. IG Farben was not just a chemical company. It was the industrial engine of the Holocaust. They manufactured Zyklon B, the poison gas used in the death chambers. They built factories next to concentration camps so they could use slave labor. Auschwitz, Buchenwald, Dachau. Prisoners worked in IG Farben plants until they died. There is a phrase in one memo, "Extermination through labor," written in cold bureaucratic German, typed neatly on company letterhead. But Klein finds something else, something that makes him stop breathing for a moment, a folder labeled American Partners. He opens it. Inside are contracts, letters, financial records, names of American corporations that did business with IG Farben. One name appears over and over, Standard Oil Company of New Jersey. Klein shows Stewart. The lieutenant does not understand the significance at first. Klein explains, Standard Oil is American. These documents show they were partners with IG Farben before the war, that they shared technology, that they signed agreements giving IG Farben control over synthetic rubber patents in the United States. Stewart asks if this is the same Standard Oil that supplies fuel to the U.S. Army. Klein nods. The same one. Stewart makes a decision. He orders his men to box up everything. Every document, every file, every scrap of paper. They work through the night. By morning, they have 50 boxes ready to ship. Stewart puts them on a truck. Destination: American headquarters in Frankfurt. From there, they will go to Washington. 6 weeks later, the boxes arrive at the Pentagon. They are logged, cataloged, and then something strange happens. They are marked classified, top secret, access restricted. Why? Because someone read them, someone high up. And they realized what these documents could do. The documents do not just implicate Standard Oil. They implicate dozens of American corporations. Ford Motor Company sold trucks to the Wehrmacht. General Motors owned factories in Germany that produced military vehicles. IBM provided punch card machines that the Nazis used to organize the Holocaust. Chase Bank handled financial transactions for Nazi officials. The list goes on. If these documents become public, it will be a scandal that dwarfs anything in American history. It will show that while American boys were dying on the battlefield, American corporations were making money from the enemy. It will destroy reputations, tank stock prices, maybe even bring down the government. So a decision is made. Bury it, not completely, but enough. Prosecute some people, the worst offenders, the ones who cannot be protected, but keep the full scope hidden. Because America needs to move forward. The war is over. The Cold War is beginning. The Soviet Union is the new enemy. And defeating the Soviets requires a strong Germany, a rebuilt Germany, which means protecting German industry, which means protecting the people who ran that industry, even if they worked for Hitler. A meeting takes place in Washington. July 1945. The location is a conference room in the Pentagon. Present are a general, a State Department official, and a lawyer representing several major corporations. On the table between them is a stack of documents, the IG Farben files. The general speaks first. He has read the files. He knows what is in them. He says that releasing these documents would be catastrophic. It would damage relationships with key corporations that are essential to national security. It would create chaos in the financial markets. It would hand propaganda to the Soviets. The State Department official agrees. He says that America needs allies in Europe, that rebuilding Germany is a top priority, that prosecuting American businessmen for helping the Nazis will make that impossible. It will look like we are punishing success, punishing capitalism itself. The corporate lawyer does not say much. He does not need to. His clients have already made their position clear. If these documents become public, they will fight. They will tie the government up in lawsuits for decades. They will use every legal tool at their disposal. And they have a lot of tools. The general picks up the stack of documents. He asks what should be done with them. The State Department official suggests they be classified, kept under lock and key, available only to those with the highest clearance, for national security purposes. The lawyer nods. He adds that some prosecution is probably necessary. For appearances, the public expects justice, so charge a few IG Farben executives, the worst ones, the ones directly involved in the death camps, give them trials, give them sentences, but keep the focus on Germany, not on America. The general agrees. He writes across the top of the stack in red pen. Top secret. Eyes only. He places the documents in a leather briefcase. He locks it. The meeting is over. The prosecutions happen. In 1947, 24 executives of IG Farben are put on trial at Nuremberg. The charges are war crimes, slavery, plunder, mass murder. The trial lasts months. The evidence is overwhelming. The defendants are found guilty. 13 are convicted. They receive sentences ranging from 18 months to 8 years, 8 years, for helping to murder millions. By the early 1950s, most of them are released. Some go back into business. They take positions at the companies that replaced IG Farben. BASF, Bayer, Horst. The cartel is officially broken, but the people are the same, and the business continues. In America, nothing happens. No trials, no prosecutions. The 1942 consent decree stands. Standard Oil paid its $50,000 fine. Signed a promise not to do it again. And that is the end of it. Thurman Arnold, the prosecutor who tried to bring them down, is long gone. He left the Justice Department in 1943, exhausted, frustrated, defeated. He became a federal judge for a while, then went into private practice. He watches from the sidelines as the system he tried to fight swallows the evidence and moves on. But Arnold does not give up completely. In the late 1940s, he writes articles, he gives speeches, he talks about the Standard Oil case. He warns that corporate power is growing too strong, that monopolies are a threat to democracy, that if we do not hold corporations accountable, they will own us. Not many people listen. America is booming, the economy is growing, people have jobs, cars, houses, the future looks bright. Why dwell on the past? Why talk about unpleasant things like treason and collaboration? The war is over. We won. Move on. Arnold dies in 1969. By then, the Standard Oil scandal is mostly forgotten. A footnote in history books. A story that does not fit the narrative of American triumph, but Harry Truman does not forget. Truman becomes president in April 1945 when Franklin Roosevelt dies. Suddenly, he is the most powerful man in the world. He has to make decisions about the atomic bomb, about the end of the war with Japan, about the peace that follows. He has more important things to worry about than a corporate scandal from 1942. But it still bothers him. Late at night, when he cannot sleep, he thinks about it. About the executives who put profits over patriotism. About the soldiers who died because rubber production was delayed. About the fact that no one was punished. In 1948, Truman pushes for stronger antitrust enforcement. He signs executive orders requiring transparency in defense contracts. He creates new oversight mechanisms. It is not enough. Not nearly enough, but it is something. A small step toward accountability. Truman also refuses to let the scandal be completely buried. He appoints a commission to investigate corporate collaboration with the Nazis. The commission works for 2 years, interviews witnesses, reviews documents, produces a thick report. The report is classified, top secret. It stays that way for decades. When reporters ask Truman about it, he says that some things are too sensitive to release, that national security is at stake, that the public will have to trust him. But in private, Truman is angry. He knows the real reason the report is classified, not national security, corporate power. The companies named in the report have friends in Congress, donors, lobbyists. They do not want the truth to come out, and they have enough influence to make sure it does not. Truman leaves office in 1953. He goes back to Missouri, to his home in Independence. He writes his memoirs. He talks about the war, about the decision to drop the atomic bomb, about the Korean War, but he does not talk much about Standard Oil. That fight is over. He lost. The years pass, the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, the Standard Oil scandal fades from public memory. The company changes its name, splits into smaller companies, Exxon, Mobil, Chevron. The Rockefeller name is no longer on the signs, but the power remains. In the 1970s, a historian named Charles Hyam starts digging. He files Freedom of Information requests. He goes through archives. He interviews people who worked for these companies. He finds evidence. Lots of it, evidence that Standard Oil, Ford, GM, IBM, and other American corporations did business with Nazi Germany, that they profited from the war, that they helped the enemy. Hyam writes a book, Trading with the Enemy. It is published in 1983. It names names, it provides documentation, it lays out the case. The book causes a brief stir. Some newspapers review it, some talk shows discuss it. But nothing happens. The corporations deny everything. They say Hyam is exaggerating, taking things out of context. They threaten lawsuits, and the story dies. In the 1990s, another round of investigations begins, this time about Nazi gold, assets stolen from Holocaust victims, deposited in Swiss banks, laundered through neutral countries. Investigators find connections to American banks, American corporations. The U.S. government promises a full investigation, transparency, justice. The State Department gets involved. They produce reports, thousands of pages. But when the reports are released, entire sections are redacted, blacked out, names removed, dates obscured. The investigators explain that some information must remain classified for privacy reasons, for national security reasons, for reasons they cannot discuss. The pattern is clear. Every time someone tries to expose the full truth, the system protects itself. Documents are classified, witnesses are silenced, evidence disappears, not through some grand conspiracy, just through the normal workings of power, through lawyers and bureaucrats and politicians who understand that some truths are too inconvenient to tell. Today, in 2026, most of the IG Farben documents are still classified. 81 years after the war ended, the National Archives has them. Researchers can request access, but the requests are often denied. National security, privacy concerns. The reasons vary, but the result is the same. The full story remains hidden. There's a museum now, in Frankfurt, in the old IG Farben headquarters building. You can take a tour. Walk through the halls where the deals were made, where patents were signed, where men in suits decided the fates of millions. In the basement, where Lieutenant Stewart and David Klein found the files, there are empty filing cabinets, gray metal, rusted now. A plaque on the wall explains that this was where the company kept its records, that American soldiers seized them in 1945, that they were shipped to Washington. The plaque does not say what happened next. It does not say that the documents were classified, that the evidence was buried, that the guilty were protected. It just says that justice was served, that the perpetrators were punished, that we learned our lesson, but we did not. Because the lesson we should have learned is that power protects itself, that corporations that are too big to fail are also too big to punish, that without constant vigilance, without citizens demanding accountability, the powerful will always get away with it. Thurman Arnold understood this. Harry Truman understood this. They fought as hard as they could, and they lost, not because they were wrong, not because the evidence was insufficient, but because the system was designed to protect the powerful. That system still exists, the names change, the companies change, but the structure remains. Corporations that are larger than countries, that have more money than governments, that write their own rules, and when they break those rules, when they betray the public trust, they pay a fine and move on. The Standard Oil scandal was not an aberration. It was not a one-time mistake. It was a preview. A glimpse of how power really works, of what happens when we let corporations become more important than countries, more powerful than governments, more valuable than justice. And the question we face is the same question Americans faced in 1942. What do we do about it? Do we demand accountability? Do we insist that some things, patriotism and loyalty and human decency, are more important than profit? Or do we accept that this is just how the world works? That business is business, that corporations have no conscience, and expecting them to is naive. Thurman Arnold made his choice. Harry Truman made his choice. They chose to fight, even though they knew they would probably lose, even though the system was rigged against them, and they did lose. But they left us something, a record, a history, a reminder that even when justice fails, even when the powerful escape punishment, it is still worth fighting, still worth standing up and saying this is wrong. Because if we do not, if we accept that corporations can betray their country and walk away with a fine, then we are saying that nothing matters, that loyalty is for sale. That patriotism is just a word you put on an advertisement, and if that is true, then what are we even fighting for? The year is 1950. 5 years after the war ended. America is booming. The economy is growing faster than anyone predicted. Factories that made tanks are now making cars. Shipyards that built destroyers are building ocean liners. The soldiers have come home. They are getting married, buying houses, having babies. This is the beginning of the American dream, the golden age, and Standard Oil is at the center of it all. The company that was accused of treason in 1942 is now more powerful than ever. They supply fuel for the new suburbs, for the highways being built across the country, for the cars rolling off assembly lines in Detroit. Standard Oil stations are everywhere. Esso, a friendly tiger in your tank. Patriotic advertisements, red, white, and blue. The scandal is forgotten, or at least no one talks about it anymore. The executives who signed the deals with IG Farben are retired or dead. William Farish is gone. The board has new faces, young men who were not there in the 30s, who had nothing to do with the cartel. They say the company has moved on, learned its lesson, that what happened was unfortunate, but it is in the past, and most Americans believe them because they want to. Because it is easier to believe that the system works, that justice was served, that the bad guys were punished, and now we can move forward. But some people know the truth. They know that Standard Oil was not punished. Not really, that $50,000 is nothing, that no one went to jail, that the company kept the patents, kept the profits, kept everything. One of those people is a lawyer named Telford Taylor. He was a prosecutor at the Nuremberg trials. He helped convict Nazi war criminals. After the trials ended, he stayed in Germany for a while. He reviewed documents. He saw the IG Farben files. He saw the evidence of American collaboration. In 1949, Taylor writes a memo to the State Department. He says that the IG Farben prosecution was incomplete, that the American companies who partnered with them should also face consequences. He recommends further investigation, possible prosecution. The memo is filed away, no action taken. Taylor tries again. He writes articles, he gives speeches. He says that justice is not finished, that we cannot declare victory over fascism while protecting the corporations that enabled it. But no one is listening. The country has moved on. The Cold War is heating up. The enemy now is communism, not fascism. We need our corporations strong. We need them productive. We cannot afford to tear them down. Taylor eventually gives up. He goes into private practice. He teaches law. He writes books about Nuremberg. But he never writes about Standard Oil. Years later, a journalist asks him why. Taylor says that some battles cannot be won. That power always protects itself, and the American people did not want to hear that their system was corrupt. They wanted heroes and villains, clean lines, easy answers. The truth was too complicated, too uncomfortable. So it was buried. But the consequences were not buried. They spread, they grew, they shaped the world we live in today. Because the lesson that American corporations learned from the Standard Oil case was not that betraying your country is wrong. The lesson was that betraying your country is profitable, as long as you do not get caught. And if you do get caught, as long as you are big enough and important enough, the punishment will be minimal. That lesson echoed through every war that followed. Korea, 1950. American troops are fighting communists. They need equipment, weapons, supplies. Defense contractors submit bids. Some of those bids are inflated, overpriced. The Pentagon knows it, but they pay anyway. Because production cannot stop, because the war effort is more important than accountability. Some congressmen complain, they hold hearings, they threaten investigations. Nothing happens. The contractors are too important, too connected. Vietnam, 1960s and 70s. The war drags on. Year after year, billions of dollars spent, tens of thousands of American lives lost. And the whole time, corporations are making money. Dow Chemical makes napalm, Agent Orange. Monsanto supplies defoliants. Bell Helicopter sells Hueys. The military-industrial complex, President Eisenhower called it, a web of corporations and government agencies that profit from war. That have an interest in making sure wars continue, because peace is bad for business. Iraq, 2003. America invades. The official reason is weapons of mass destruction. But the weapons are never found. Years later, documents reveal that oil companies lobbied for the invasion, that they wanted access to Iraqi oil fields. Halliburton, the company formerly run by Vice President Dick Cheney, gets billions in no-bid contracts to rebuild infrastructure, to provide services to troops. Investigations find massive fraud, overcharging, waste. Some executives are fined. No one goes to jail. The company keeps the contracts. Afghanistan, 20 years, the longest war in American history, trillions of dollars spent. And at the end, the Taliban takes back control in a matter of weeks. Where did the money go? To contractors, private security firms, construction companies, most of them American. They built bases, trained soldiers, provided logistics. Some of that work was necessary, some of it was not. Some of it was fraud, pure theft. The Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction publishes reports, thousands of pages documenting waste and corruption. A few people are prosecuted, most are not. The system protects itself. The pattern is always the same. War starts, corporations profit, some of them cheat. Investigations happen, fines are paid, no one important goes to jail. The corporations survive, they get richer, they use that money to lobby, to donate to politicians, to make sure the system stays rigged in their favor, and it works. Because the American people are busy. They have jobs, families, bills to pay. They do not have time to read 1,000-page reports about defense contractor fraud. They trust that someone is watching, that someone is holding these companies accountable. But no one is. Not really. Because the people who are supposed to be watching are the same people who take campaign donations from these companies, who get jobs at these companies after they leave government, the revolving door they call it. It started with Standard Oil, the decision in 1942 to let them off with a fine, to prioritize the war effort over justice. That decision sent a message: corporations are too important to punish, and every administration since, Democrat and Republican, has followed that precedent. When banks crashed the economy in 2008, they were bailed out. Taxpayer money, trillions of dollars, and the executives who caused the crash kept their jobs, kept their bonuses. A few paid fines. No one went to jail. Too big to fail, they said. If we punish them, the economy will collapse. So we saved them, and they learned nothing. When pharmaceutical companies pushed opioids, knowing they were addictive, knowing they were killing people, they were sued. They paid settlements, billions of dollars, but it was less than they made from selling the drugs. So it was just a cost of doing business, and the executives kept their jobs, kept their fortunes. The Sackler family, owners of Purdue Pharma, gave millions to museums and universities. Their name is on buildings, on wings of galleries. Blood money, but it is accepted. Because money has no smell, as the Romans said. This is the world that Standard Oil helped create. A world where corporations are more powerful than governments, where profit is the only value that matters, where betraying the public trust is just another business strategy. But it does not have to be this way. Because the Standard Oil scandal also showed us something else. It showed us that when citizens demand accountability, when prosecutors like Thurman Arnold refuse to back down, when politicians like Harry Truman stand up and say this is wrong, change is possible. It may not be complete. It may not be perfect, but it is something. The 1942 investigation forced Standard Oil to release the synthetic rubber patents. That allowed American factories to ramp up production. By 1944, the United States was producing more synthetic rubber than Germany. That rubber went into tires, into seals, into gaskets. It helped win the war. If Arnold had not pushed, if Truman had not held hearings, if the public had not demanded action, that might not have happened. The scandal might have stayed hidden, and the war might have lasted longer. So the fight mattered, even though Standard Oil was not destroyed, even though justice was incomplete. The fight still mattered, and the fight continues today. There are still prosecutors going after corporate fraud. Still journalists investigating corruption. Still politicians, a few of them, who refuse to take corporate money. Who actually fight for their constituents instead of their donors. They are rare, but they exist. And there are citizens, ordinary people who pay attention, who read past the headlines, who vote based on policy instead of personality, who demand that their representatives actually represent them, who understand that democracy requires participation, that freedom is not free, that if you want accountability, you have to fight for it. These people are the inheritors of Thurman Arnold and Harry Truman. They are the ones keeping the flame alive, the belief that right and wrong still matter, that patriotism is not just a marketing slogan, that corporations owe a duty to the country that allows them to exist. The question is whether there are enough of them. Whether in the age of TikTok and Twitter, of short attention spans and information overload, enough people care to make a difference. The answer will determine what kind of country we become, whether we are a democracy where the people have power, or an oligarchy where corporations rule and the rest of us just work for them. The Standard Oil scandal is not just history. It is a warning, a preview of what happens when we stop paying attention, when we let the powerful do whatever they want, when we accept that this is just how the world works. Thurman Arnold did not accept that. Harry Truman did not accept that. Lieutenant James Stewart and translator David Klein, who found the IG Farben files in that basement in Frankfurt, they did not accept that. They believed that truth matters, that justice matters, that some things are worth fighting for even when you know you will probably lose, and they were right. Because even though they lost, even though Standard Oil survived, even though the documents were classified and the guilty were protected, they left us a record. They left us the knowledge of what happened. And knowledge is power, not the kind of power that buys elections or writes laws, but the kind of power that allows us to see the truth, to understand how the system works, to recognize when we are being lied to. That power is what allows us to fight back, to demand better, to refuse to accept that corporations can betray us with impunity, to insist that patriotism and loyalty and basic human decency are more important than quarterly profits. The battle that Arnold and Truman fought is not over. It will never be over, because power always seeks to protect itself. Corporations will always put profit first unless we force them to do otherwise, and forcing them requires eternal vigilance. It requires citizens who refuse to be passive, who refuse to accept easy lies, who understand that freedom requires responsibility. This is not a comfortable message. It is not inspiring in the usual way. It does not promise that everything will be fine, that good always triumphs over evil. That justice is inevitable, because that is not true. Justice is not inevitable. It only happens when people fight for it, when they refuse to give up even when the odds are against them. The men who ran Standard Oil in the 1930s and 1940s gambled that they could get away with betraying their country, and they won that gamble. Because the system protected them, because the government decided that punishing them was too expensive, too disruptive, too politically inconvenient. But their names are remembered: William Farish, Frank Howard, the executives who chose profit over patriotism. History knows what they did. And that knowledge has power, because it reminds us that betrayal is possible, that corporations are not our friends, that when they talk about serving the community or supporting the troops or being good corporate citizens, we should be skeptical. We should ask questions. We should demand proof. And if they fail that test, if we find that they are putting profits over people, over country, over basic morality, then we should hold them accountable, not with $50,000 fines, but with real consequences. Criminal prosecutions, jail time for executives, seizure of assets, breakup of monopolies. The tools exist. We just have to use them. That is the legacy of the Standard Oil scandal. Not a story of justice achieved, but a reminder of justice denied, and a challenge to us to do better, to be better, to build a country where loyalty is not for sale, and patriotism is not just a word you put on an advertisement. The choice is ours. Just like it was Thurman Arnold's choice to prosecute, like it was Harry Truman's choice to speak out, like it was the grand jury's choice to indict, we have the same choice: to fight or to accept, to demand accountability or to look the other way, to be citizens or to be consumers. The Standard Oil story does not have a happy ending, but it is not over, because we are still writing it. Every time we vote, every time we speak up, every time we refuse to accept that this is just how things are, we are continuing the fight that Arnold and Truman started. And maybe, if enough of us fight, if enough of us refuse to give up, we can win the battle they lost. We can build a country where corporations serve the people, not the other way around, where profit is not the only value that matters, where betraying your country actually has consequences. That country does not exist yet, but it could. if we want it badly enough, if we are willing to fight for it, not with guns or violence, but with votes and voices and the refusal to be silent when we see wrong being done. That is the real lesson of Standard Oil. Not that the system is corrupt, we already knew that. But that even in a corrupt system, individuals can make a difference. They can shine a light, they can ask hard questions, they can refuse to go along. And even if they do not win, even if the powerful escape justice, they can leave a record, they can tell the truth. And the truth has a way of surviving, of spreading, of eventually maybe changing things. So here is my challenge to you. Remember this story. Remember what Standard Oil did. Remember that they were never really punished, and remember that the system that protected them still exists. It is more powerful now than it was in 1942. The corporations are bigger, the money is bigger, the influence is bigger, but so is our power, if we choose to use it, if we refuse to be passive, if we demand that our leaders actually lead, that our corporations actually serve the public good, that our country actually lives up to its ideals. The fight continues. It has been going on for 80 years. It will probably go on for 80 more. But every generation has to decide, are we going to fight or are we going to surrender? Thurman Arnold and Harry Truman made their choice. Now it is our turn. What are you going to do? If this story made you think, if it made you angry, if it made you want to know more, then you are already doing something. You are paying attention, and that is the first step. The next step is to share this, to talk about it, to make sure that this story, this warning from history, does not get buried again. Because the powerful are counting on us to forget. They are counting on us to move on, to accept that this is just how things are, to be too busy, too tired, too distracted to care. Prove them wrong. Subscribe if you want more stories that do not make it into the textbooks. Stories about how power really works, about the deals made in boardrooms that shape history just as much as the battles fought on battlefields, about the uncomfortable truths that we need to hear even when we do not want to. This is not entertainment. This is not clickbait. This is the real history of how we got here. And if we do not understand that history, we are doomed to repeat it. So hit that subscribe button. Not because I am asking you to, but because you want to be one of the people who knows, who understands, who refuses to be lied to. In a world full of noise and distraction and carefully crafted narratives, the truth is a rare commodity, and it is worth fighting for. The battle that Thurman Arnold started is not over. It is still being fought every day, in courtrooms and boardrooms and voting booths, and we need people who understand what we are fighting for, who know the history, who will not give up just because the odds are long and the enemy is powerful. Be one of those people. That is all I am asking. Pay attention, remember. And when the time comes to choose between comfort and truth, between silence and speaking up, choose truth. Choose to speak up, because that is what Arnold did, that is what Truman did, and that is what we must do if we want to honor their legacy. If we want to build a country worth defending, a country where patriotism means something more than profit, where loyalty is not for sale, where betraying your country actually matters. That country is possible, but only if we fight for it. Are you ready? The soldiers who died in the Atlantic while Standard Oil paid royalties to IG Farben. The workers who could not get tires because synthetic rubber production was blocked. The families who lost sons and fathers while executives protected their profits. They did not get justice, but they left us a question that every generation has to answer. When your country needs you, whose side are you on? Standard Oil answered that question. So did Thurman Arnold. So did Harry Truman. Now you have to answer it too. Not with words, with actions, with choices, with the decision to pay attention even when it is uncomfortable, to remember even when it is easier to forget. I am John, and this is why I make these videos, because the stories they do not teach in school are the ones we need most. The ones that show us how power really works, how ordinary people can fight back, and why that fight matters even when we lose. If you made it this far, you are not ordinary. You are someone who wants to understand, who refuses easy answers, who knows that history is not about memorizing dates. It is about recognizing patterns. So when those patterns repeat, and they always do, you will see them coming. There are not many of us left. People who read past the headlines, who ask inconvenient questions, who understand that freedom requires more than standing for the anthem. It requires standing up when everyone else sits down. If you are one of those people, I want you here. Hit subscribe, not for me, for yourself, because the next time a corporation wraps itself in the flag while betraying everything it stands for, you will recognize it. And recognition is the first step to resistance. New videos every week, stories that matter, truth that cuts, no propaganda. No corporate sponsors, just history the way it actually happened. The ugly parts, the parts that powerful people wish we would forget. And if this video made you think differently about patriotism, about loyalty, about what corporations owe to the countries that allow them to exist, then do one more thing. Share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear this. Because this story is too important to stay buried. They buried it once. In 1942, in classified files and consent decrees, in $50,000 fines and empty promises. We are not going to let them bury it again. The fight continues, and now you know why. See you in the next one. Stay sharp.